welcome. How you doing?
Randy, great to see you. Thanks for inviting me back.
Absolutely. You are, I think, our first two-timer that we've had. So
I'm
everybody,
honored.
this is episode, honor's all mine. All right, this is episode number 162. Really excited to have Peter Bell, general partner and chairman of Amity Ventures. Our title topic is best practices for sales in startups, something that Peter knows a lot about. We're sponsored today by Apex Revenue and Phone Ready Leads. They are the audience activation sponsor of Sales Community. Little shout out for them. So Phone Ready Leads, long story short, typical pickup time. If somebody's doing cold calling, usually 5% of the time somebody will pick up. They've got a formula that once it goes through them, the pickup is more like 20 or 25%. So you think of the benefit to your sales team of getting somebody on the other end to pick up once every 4 or 5 times as opposed to once every 20 times. And Peter, that's certainly a much better way to build pipe, huh?
Absolutely. I love great value prop.
There you go. And then Apex Revenue, they basically leverage that IP, that unique IP to also do then outsourced calling as well. And as always, brought to you by Sales Community. For those that are members, thank you very much. For those that are not, you can click on, there's a link here that Tucker just put in, Winter Free, where you can join for free. And as always, we have Tucker behind the scenes helping. So Tucker, thanks a lot for your help. So by way of introduction, Peter and his family is mostly in Boston. They're in Boston. They're in the Bay Area for a long time now, between Boston, Sarasota, and Narragansett, Rhode Island. They have an awesome family that we've known all the kids' lives. Sons Frank, Bradley, and PJ, who I can vouch are awesome. And Peter for sure had one amazing sales call like I did, where you got Mary Lee to say hi, and she's a hot ticket and fantastic as well. And we're trying to figure out, do the math, but it's been probably close to 40 years or 37 years that we've known each other. So certainly a lot of great history there. We met back, I guess it'd be in the 80s at BC and EMC. We're together in San Fran in 89. I was fortunate enough to have Peter on a board of a company I was running, Permabit. We've done tons of, and Peter, have you seen the Patriots Dynasty?
Oh yeah, I watched some. I watched a little bit of it on the plane last on Sunday. Amazing.
So good, but so many of those Super Bowls were out with our kids until they got tired of going to too many Super Bowls, believe it or not. And Peter for sure is an amazing mentor and coach to so many, and one of my best friends who I know will always be there no matter what. And it's really because of Peter that I started Sales Community. He said during COVID, he's like, hey Randy, you know so many people on the sales side, you're helping so many tech companies get in through other CXOs and CIOs, why don't you figure something out? So that eventually he ended up springboarding into Sales Community. So Peter, thank you so much for that. We also have some other intros. So another longtime friend, great exec, John McCarthy. Peter Bell's a prolific connector, endless amount of energy, loyal to his core. He's a man of many interests, but the common threads seem to be friends, family, and the pursuit of interesting businesses, hopefully profitable businesses. His thirst for continual education and the desire to share his wisdom with the next generation complements his desire to helping others. John Clavin, also a longtime great friend of us both. Peter is a relationship builder, especially when selling. He has the uncanny ability to make everyone feel like they're talking with someone they have known for a long time and will know for a long time. Peter is not afraid to show emotion when selling. He has even known to cry in a meeting. Any story behind that?
That was a sales call in like 1988 in San Francisco, where I end of the quarter, I cried in the briefcase to appeal to that I was going to buy. I was buying an engagement ring for my wife, and needed the number, needed the order to make the number.
Nice. There you go. Old school. And then lastly, John says, makes people feel like he really cares, which he totally does. Billy Scannell, a longtime friend, president at Dell. I've known Peter for almost 35 years and have always been immensely impressed with his intelligence and work ethic. he leaves it out on the field every day. Many great memories of our early days working with him at EMC, and even better ones as an investor in his first startup, Storage Networks. I'm thrilled to say I've had a front row seat watching him go from a sales rep at EMC to CEO of Storage Networks to very successful VC, and even teaching classes at various colleges and universities, most notably BC. Proud of his many accomplishments. So pretty good way to
Very
brighten up
nice.
your day.
Very nice.
All right. So let's jump into questions. So people may not realize, which I know very well, your first job out of BC was actually as an accountant.
Yes, I worked at One Federal Street in Boston at Price Waterhouse. Now it's Price Waterhouse Coopers, a great firm. But I realized after a few months there, this is the fall of 1986, it was not a fit for me. And fortunately, a mutual close friend, Randy, of yours and mine, Andy O'Brien, I called Andy O'Brien because I remember him loving where he worked, and he was at this really cool company. He was growing. He was like the New York sales manager.
Yeah.
And Andy fortunately made the intro to the founders at EMC, and I got my interview there. So, and the rest, well, I'm sure we'll get into some of it, but that was one of the, whenever I see Andy, I saw him at your daughter's wedding, Randy, at Shannon's wedding, and I love Andy and always thank him for helping me transition from being an accountant to getting into sales.
Excellent. And we didn't prep this, but do you want to share what the moment was with the counting the pages in the phone book?
Yes. So the a gentleman who was the top dog, if you will, the senior partner, after my 3-week training, I was unassigned to a client. So he asked me to come to his office to do some work for him. And at that time, we'd have these big work papers. And he asked me to kind of foot, which would be check the numbers with a calculator, a 10 key, where you put the numbers and then there's a plus sign. But those are built for righties, and I'm a lefty. So I was going like this instead of like this. And he got pissed off, and he got the Boston white pages and made me add up the phone numbers in the phone book. And that's when I decided maybe this is not the right cultural alignment for my interests and passions. And that's when I called my friend, Mr. O'Brien.
Excellent. So good. And then maybe briefly just go through your impressive career from there.
So I spent 10 years at EMC, 86 to 96. I took a 2-year leave to go to business school at Harvard. EMC was nice enough through many at EMC, but Mike Rutgers, one of my mentors, let me come back to EMC and essentially paid for my education. And then
I remember you were still finishing up at Harvard, and then you were already started the job working.
Yes. I was still finishing Harvard, and I was running the Chicago mid-range or PPG district or area, actually.
Yeah.
Area, because I had the central, to Chicago, upper Midwest through Texas, and then the Southeast, Atlanta. And then I left EMC. I did a couple of startups. The early stage, it didn't really pan out. But at one of them, I met this guy, Bill Miller. We can come back to it, but we saw an opportunity for cloud computing. We called it utility computing. We started Storage Networks together, raised a bunch of venture money, and then took that public in 2000. And then after Storage Networks, I started teaching. I taught at Sloan and at Boston College, as Randy had mentioned, and started getting into angel investing on my own, and then ultimately joined a firm in Cambridge, Massachusetts called Highland Capital. And as we grew, I opened the office in Palo Alto and eventually became managing general partner of the firm. Met 2 young guys at Highland, CJ and Pat, who are now my partners together at Amity Ventures. And Amity's been around for about 7 years. And we do early stage investing, early and growth stage in the software sector.
Awesome. And I'm a happy LP from Highland and Amity. And is the Amity, I don't even know, are you still taking investors for Amity?
We are. We're going to launch a new fund soon, and we're happy to chat about venture and how it relates to sales. But we've got a bunch of great companies, some great entrepreneurs. Amity comes out of the Latin around ami, around trust, love, friendship. We look to back founders who we think can take the company all the way. So we try to be not only an investor, but a really hopefully aligned partner with the entrepreneur on his or her journey to build something of consequence.
Awesome. So just before we get backlogged here, from Michael Norton, who's at Sandler, says, good to see you guys again. Thanks, Michael. And Peter Sullivan, legends, love the stories. Thank you, Peter. Peter, feel free to ask any questions. Peter is at ServiceNow, I believe. Ken Grohe says, Peter is the best customer-centric executive around, lead by example on countless meetings all across the country and every day, every hour, 7 days per week, each week. Go BC, hashtag data tone. So thanks for that. And others that want to come in with comments or questions would be great as well. So Peter, you mentioned with Amity, the ideal is kind of backing the founders from the beginning, kind of throughout. Any example you can give?
Sure. I'll give a, maybe a relatively recent. In venture, we have a long horizon. So, but we have a company called Causley. It's sort of dual headquartered in New York and Boston. And the co-founders, Ellen Rubin and Shmuel Klieger, who are, I'd call both serial entrepreneurs. And I've been fortunate to back them both prior in different companies. And they both told me they want to do another company, but one needed, Shmuel wanted a CEO and Ellen wanted a superb technical founder. And they came together about 3 years ago through our introduction, and they're on just an awesome journey. It's still early, but around the whole idea of autonomic computing, really using AI to run the data center. But I've been fortunate to know Ellen and Shmuel for over 20 years. Shmuel's last company called VM Turbo was sold to IBM a couple of years ago. I was on the board there for a long time. And Ellen's company, Clear Sky, was sold to AWS. And then Ellen was an executive at AWS. But I think they really fit in with the whole Amity mission around, founders building companies of consequence. And both me and my partners at Amity, we really look at our relationship with the entrepreneur as a lifelong relationship, because these companies take a really long time to build, and the journey is quite uncertain. But what's consistent is the quality of these founders. So that's kind of really, I think. And we, in fact, at our annual meeting, we talked about, we highlighted just the special founders, because that for us is the most important decision we make, is who we back, and the decision to go on the journey.
Yeah, and I know so many of them appreciate, so many in VC or private equity have kind of only been on that side. They've never really been on the operating side, let alone, kind of sales careers like you, and then kind of CEO careers. So I would imagine there's just so much value add that you can bring, having been in their shoes and having been an operator.
Yeah, obviously the value add comes in many different ways, the network, the relationship and all that. But I think for many, and I know for me, and thinking back to some of the folks I had involved when I was a CEO and a founder, is just really someone who you really know is in the foxhole with you, that you can trust, because you never really know all the things that are going to happen. So there's sort of I'll call it the very tangible things that hopefully a good VC brings, but sometimes the intangibles in any, like, as you know, Randy, in any relationship is being there for someone, is sometimes the most important thing.
Absolutely. All right, we have from Mike Norton. One of the things we hear and see from early stage startups is that the founder/CEO has the passion for the product, but makes the mistake believing they also have the best, they are also the best salesperson to sell the product. Have you guys experienced this dilemma, and what course of correction did you take? So I guess the concept would be summary, founder-led sales, whether they can sell or can't.
No, I think Michael's question and Randy, you and I were kind of talking about this prior, is a very good one. It's this idea of sort of the founder-led sales, or when are you ready to hire the sales manager, the sales team, or whether it's individual contributors or a sales manager. I do think that sometimes companies jump the gun. They raise a round of capital and they use that. They're going to invest, call it half of that capital in engineering and product development, half in sales and marketing, and overall go to market, but something that's not yet ready. So we like to see a founder who has the chops and is willing to be in front of the customer, both to sell, but also to learn. But at some point, the company's got to begin to scale. And it's always that fine line. When do you find the product market fit? And when are you really ready to kind of begin to turn over the reins? So it's a fine line. But I think if the founder can't sell the product, I think it's extremely difficult for anyone else to sell it, because the founder has, I'll call it the, kind of the authenticity that really only the founder can have in an early stage company. And also often the product isn't really fully baked, but you still need to get it into the customer's hands. And sometimes that's easier for the founder to do than an individual contributor salesperson. But happy to go into that in more detail. It's a great question, Michael. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times people say, oh, if it's a, engineering centric founder, engineering folks can't sell, but certainly, several examples. You take Moshe back at EMC, right? He was the godfather of Symmetrics, and he may not, I'll say maybe he didn't know how to sell, but he did, because he really kind of had that passion. Do you see that these, I'll say, engineering centric, non-go-to-market CEOs can really do those founder-led sales early on?
Yes. And I love the Moshe example. I mean, think about Dick Egan. I mean, who's the founder or the co-founder, the E and EMC.
Yeah.
Was, exceptional and a deeply technical person, but Dick was incredible. Right. We all wanted him on, we all wanted him on sales calls. But I do think, the founder, if you look at any, think of any founder you respect, is they have to sell customers. They got to sell their partners. They have to sell investors, so they have to be good salespeople. They may not have the selling skills, all the things that Randy, you talk about. I heard it in spades from so many quality people you had at the Sales Community Advisory Board event a few weeks ago in Colorado. So they may not have all the best practices, but the founder needs to know how to sell the product and the company. But then I'll call it the sales executive team needs to put all of I'll call it the regiment, they kind of the machine. They need to build. And no better example than someone who was kind enough to say some nice words. If you look at what Bill Scannell has really done, over his career, is build and operate the machine, and then tweak the machine as markets change and products change. So that's where the professional. And I know we're both Patriot fans, Randy, and maybe we've fallen on a little hard times in the last year or so. We'll see. And we have a new regime with Coach Mayo. But I always think of, Belichick. He built the machine, but you really needed Bob Kraft to sell the vision, if you will. And so I think of Bob Kraft as the founder, and Bill Belichick as the incredible operating executive. And I think that's the special relationship between the founder and, I'll call it, the VP of sales. It could be the CEO, whatever it might be. But that is getting, that right. As we know, Randy, we had the signs at EMC. It's the product, stupid. We had that in the sales offices, and then in the engineering offices, we had it's the Salesforce, stupid. You really need both.
Yeah, absolutely. And going on down from Belichick, right? So he has great direct reports who, in effect, are those first line managers, and then you've got the players who, in effect are the sales reps. So we have a question here from Henry. We have a ICP that has a trade show that is widely attended by executives. So we're hosting a booth and cocktail hour. Any thoughts on early stage startups attending their first conferences? The SDR team is having great success booking demos leading into the team. So I'm going to take this first. So my first sales job, I got parachuted into England, was there for a year and a half, and then to Australia. So I'd go to these, IBM user group shows, and there'd be these booths, and people would be standing behind and not saying anything. So, the net is, obviously you need the leads, but view everybody as a lead. Go out and talk to whoever it is and engage. I was at SaaStr, which was one of the big industry conferences a couple years ago during COVID, and I can't tell you how many times I would walk by and nobody knew whether I was ICP or not ICP. They would not come out and not say anything, and then finally got to be a point where ones that I could be a candidate for, then I would go engage with them, and I'd be like, hey, why wouldn't you ask me anything? Well, I don't, don't do this, don't do that. Conferences is great. I just would be aggressive in a good way. Little other trick that I used to do is I'd have my business card and say, hey, if you give out my business card to the bar, you can get a free drink. So that's a good way to get friends as well. Peter, any perspectives you have?
Well, no, I love your comments, and Henry, great question. No, I think trade shows are a great way, obviously in a very compressed period of time to meet a lot of prospects, potential customers, partners, competitors. And, Randy used the word aggressive. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's really an opportunity. And it's also for this, and I remember the early trade shows back in when I was a sales, we called them, we call them basically telemarketers. Now you call them SDRs, but it's also a great way to practice your pitch a lot and refine it, because you might be able to talk to like 70, or 100 prospects in a day. And then doing it face to face, you just get better and better at it. So it's a great opportunity for your sales team, Henry.
Yeah, and whatever you can do to, now it's pretty easy, get everybody's contact info. And it's not just getting the contact info, but if you've got, some way to qualify in 60 seconds to see if there's interest, that they're worthwhile, and schedule some follow-up there, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. So Henry, thanks so much. So Peter, we talked about kind of product market fit. So how do you think of product market fit when you're going to invest, which I would imagine would be pretty similar to if you're in sales and you want to go look at a company, thinking about product market fit?
Yep. And we're typically investing because we're more often not in the first, kind of institutional round of capital. So maybe they've raised some angel, but we're in that you'd call maybe seed stage. So in most cases, it's before this product market fit. But hopefully between our round and the next round, that's critical that the company finds product market fit. And I'd say it's, especially in this current climate in the capital markets, very difficult to raise that larger Series A. Series A's now are around, $12 to $20 million. Very difficult to raise the Series A if you haven't found product market fit. So we spend a lot of time in the stage post our investment is getting to that product market fit. And that's where you really begin to have demonstrable, repeatable sales cycles. And that we can go into more detail, but that is finding product market fit is extremely difficult. And sometimes you don't actually know when you found it. Many companies feel that they found it before they've actually really found it. And that can be challenging both to the kind of overall company performance, but also to the scaling of the sales force.
Yeah. And then certainly having customers is a great sign with product market fit. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How heavy a lift that is.
I always tell like salespeople is like, if they're interviewing at a startup, it's like did you talk to the customer? You'd say whether you're an investor or you're, thinking about joining, did you talk to customers? How are they using the product? Is there consistency when you talk to multiple customers? Are the sales reps that are at the company, are they making their quota? Are they making commissions? Are they in love with the company? That maybe I might be dating, maybe we're dating ourselves, Randy, but I would say, to be a great sales rep, you have to drink the Kool-Aid of the company. You have to really believe in the product, the company, the people, et cetera, et cetera. And when you see that, usually the company's kind of found the product market fit.
Yeah, that's great. Now, it may be a bad analogy, but it seems like today with so many people being remote and Zooms, it's hard to be in those bullpens, younger in career, and you're fired up and you're excited, totally drinking the Kool-Aid. But when you're kind of remote, it's kind of a hard thing to really get totally fired up about. Do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. And I talk to, founders, CEOs, salespeople, engineers, a lot about this kind of the new work environment, whether it's remote, hybrid, in the office, et cetera. I would encourage, especially people earlier in their career, if they can find a company that's in the office or has some type of consistent like hybrid approach. You're in 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I think the quality of the learning, you're learning about your skills, learning about the business, learning about the culture, learning about the products, learning about the customers, sharing knowledge with other salespeople, all of those things, and then the mentorship that you get in the office. No, I think as you sort of go along your career, you have relationships, you maybe have the expertise, and you really know what you're doing. I think you can be very successful as a remote salesperson. But I'll be interested to see how this all plays out over the next 5 years, because now kind of we're post-COVID, but there is a new work environment. It seems to be hybrid for most companies. I'll be interested to see how it plays out and how we begin to look at data to compare remote, hybrid, or in the office. I think we're going to find that the in the office or a consistent hybrid approach is going to be the ones that have much higher productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that learning curve as well, right? I mean, just being osmosis, watching and seeing.
Absolutely.
And the problem is so many, these days, it's easier to be at home. Yeah, it's easier not have to commute or drive or fly or, just even the notion of, just going on sales calls, right? In the old days, it was, all about sales calls face to face. You build a relationship and, how much of that gets lost now.
Absolutely. Plus, you want to have a great outcome, in terms of the business, making quota, delighting customers, but you also want to enjoy the journey. And it's just a lot more, I don't know, it just seems like it's a lot more fun to be with people, be with your team, be with your customers, and when I say be with them, really be with them, experience, go to visit their company, go to dinner with them, whatever it is, take a walk with them, celebrate the wins, figure out the challenges. It's a lot more enjoyable to be together doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Joey had mentioned, who's Fund Ready Leads and Apex Revenue, that when he visited Talk Desk, that they were so happy with him, they actually gave him a gift. I mean, how awesome is that?
I love that.
So now what about as you start to scale, you talk about founder-led sales, but then kind of hiring a rep versus a leader?
Yeah, that is a very good question and a very difficult one, because it has to be the right fit for a specific company. But I think what I often see is you hire the manager, the leader, and then he or she hires a team. But because, as I mentioned earlier, product market fit, the kind of goal line often moves. I think there is some benefit in the earlier stages to have that individual contributor reporting right into the founders, because you also want to have very low barriers to information exchange. And it's sort of like the telephone game when you're in kindergarten, you talk and the whole story changes. It's really important to to hear from the customer directly or from the person right in front of the customer, i.e. the salesperson. So in some of my companies, in fact, we're hiring these, you might think of them as a sales engineer, but they're very much, high activity, but deep technical chops. And that does two things. It can help build some trust, more trust with the customer quickly because they have the technical chops, but also the kind of translation back to engineering, back to product management. But I think at some point, like in any, whether it's, you could take any sport, you need a great coach. I'll call that the first line manager. So at some point, you need to have someone who really knows how to build an organization, and who really knows all the things you're going to begin to put in place around compensation plans, kind of the sales stack, sales measurement, quota assignment, things like that. Often the sales manager in a earlier stage company may have a lot of say in terms of pricing strategies and things like that, because you may not have a big marketing department, and it may be a new sector where there's not, comps to build your pricing model. So there's a lot that sales manager, a lot of responsibilities, but a lot that they can bring to the table.
Absolutely. And great question here from Emmett. Had a question regarding what factors led to Peter's decision to join EMC over other companies when making the jump to sales. Also, what would you consider the advantages or disadvantages of entering the sales industry in a startup? I'll take it first. So when I did it, I was originally looking at some of the big companies. At the time would be like Xerox and IBM. EMC had actually hired Andy and some other friends, and I had sold t-shirts and hats and things during college, and they all went there. And I think at the time at EMC, you could make maybe like 24,000 the first year, and everything else was 18,000. So I'm like, all right, cool. If I can go make more money, that's great. But in hindsight, I would say obviously very lucky move. But one of the advantages for sure is the startup is that you get to see all the different functional areas. So we knew engineering, we knew finance, we knew operations. You kind of, engineering, kind of everything and everybody, which is really a great way to get a perspective on just how businesses work. And the great thing, Emmett, for your generation is these days you can really go somewhere for a year. For whatever reason, if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. With us, we had to go somewhere for 5 years. If you changed jobs, something was wrong with you. Peter?
Yep. Great question, Emmett. I'd say on the first part of your question, what decisions was, one, I as I mentioned earlier, I really did not like where I was. And some of it is my answers with the benefit of hindsight, but it's such an advantage. I know a few people there that were at EMC, Andy and others, probably 5 others. That's a huge benefit. People there that are enjoying their job. And I remember years later, I worked for a guy named Frank Keeney, who became a mentor to me and many others. And he always talked about there's 3 things you want in a job. You want to enjoy the work, you want to make a living, compensation, things like that, and you want to be intellectually challenged. And often you can only find 2 of the 3 in a job. And for me, I really didn't know at the time, but EMC was all 3. The people were great. I could do well. If you hit your number, you could make a very good living. The industry was always changing. So there was always new challenges, new opportunities, new territories, new products. So I think maybe related to the second part of your question, the disadvantages of entering, a sales role in a startup is that majority of startups fail. So if you leave, you're gainfully employed at some very successful larger tech company and you go to a startup, it's probably 50%, give or take, chance that company will not make it. So that's a bummer. The advantage is that you can really put your, if you look at people like Randy, Billy Scannell, many others that Randy's had or talks about, Dave Schneider, who recently was on ServiceNow, you can really be part of building the company. Harder to do that if you join, a 5,000 sales force company. It's unlikely you're going to be a builder of the company. So that part is really rewarding. And if you do that, the economic rewards, if you build a company, will be extremely substantial.
Totally. Great question, Emmett. Thank you. So for others watching, feel free to comment or ask other questions. So good transition there. So what about trying to, for people that want to get into sales in a startup? We both talk to people sometimes that are, big companies only, which may or may not be a fit. What's your take?
My typical, when folks call me that are working at larger companies saying, hey, I'd like to join a startup for whatever reason, maybe that they're not getting the reward, or whether that's the financial reward or the emotional reward, or they feel like they're a cog in the wheel, or maybe they want to find a new sector that's growing, which is awesome. I say, you have to have a company that's really poised to be a rocket ship. And what I mean by that it's growing, that the market size is such that it could support a $1 billion type business. The quality of the management, is people who you can really believe in, and that you feel that the industry is one that's important to you. So, for example, someone maybe on this Zoom or on this LinkedIn might be really interested around the gaming industry. Mobile gaming is huge, great. But for someone else, that may be something that's not interesting at all. Fine, you can build it's a huge market, but it may not be interesting. So find something that you're interested in. If you look at, we have a lot of friends, Randy and I, and some of them we saw out at Randy's sales community event. They're in the cybersecurity space. I love cyber. I love it because it's a huge industry, but these products are like super important to their customers, meaning they're really securing or helping these businesses, really operate. So that might be a sector that's important to you. You might look at, we've recently invested in a digital health company. Super important. It's the largest component of our, other than defense, of our GDP. That might be an industry that that is exciting to you. So find an industry that you think is exciting, and then find the best company. I can tell you that the CEOs of these venture-backed companies are all looking for great talent. So you really are in the driver's seat, and you have the pick of the litter. So it's a really great time, I think, to think about joining a growth company, but you need to spend the time, evaluating to make sure you're finding the right fit for you.
Absolutely. Great point. And as you evaluate, kind of, I guess, compensation comes into play, comp and stock, whether you're somebody who wants to go into sales or you're on the leadership CEO side saying, okay, how can we have, compensation drive behavior?
Yeah, the comp, and if anyone's interested, there's a lot of, even though venture is obviously private markets, we have a lot of data, and I'm happy to share that in terms of what role we could do it by role, stage, location, cash comp, bonus, equity. So happy to share that. It's an annual survey, so it's usually a few months out of date, but it's still directionally pretty correct. But it is very difficult because many of these earlier stage companies, there's very little history. So you can't say, well, what did you make, 4 years ago, 3 years ago? So some of it is based a little bit on instinct, in terms of, kind of comp versus quota. But I think most venture-backed companies need to obviously pay market salary. So there is market data. And then there's on the stock, it goes back to some of the things we've discussed earlier, is you have to believe that the outcome can be huge, because if the outcome isn't huge and you look at the percentage you might get, and then look at what's called the preference stack, how much money's been invested in the company, et cetera. If it's not a meaningful exit, and I'd say meaningful is, in the $1 billion range, it's going to be difficult for that stock to be worth a meaningful amount.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. So that your data thing on there, we should do something. We could post that and share that for sure. What about when you think about the tech stack, kind of by early stage, kind of growing up?
Yeah, I think, and probably most people on this call know that the tech stack has gotten much more robust. And I think depending on what role you're going in at, there's opportunities if you're in kind of a managerial role where you might be actually implementing the tech stack, or you may even do that as an individual contributor. But some of the stuff gets pretty expensive, as Randy knows. So it's a fine line, and depending on what stage, you're gonna have less tools. But obviously, starting with the CRM, is kind of the centerpiece of that. But I think there's a huge opportunity for the sales stack to be startup. I'll call it more startup ready. Some of this, there's some open source tools emerging, but I'm a big believer that kind of, I'll call it tools, automation, making the sales job, I don't want to say easier, it's never easy, but giving, just like you do in playing sports, is the right equipment. And that's becoming sort of a ticket to entry. So I think if I was evaluating a company to join as a salesperson or sales leader, I would really want to understand what capabilities, what tools are in place, and you'd have to believe that you can be successful, with that set of tools.
And then same thing these days, if you're going to be a CRO or go-to-market leader, CMO, you also need to have some awareness of the tech stack and what would you put in place, because to a certain degree, selling is selling, but it's not as much old school selling as it is, okay, how do you put these tools in place that then can give you that extra lift and that extra leverage too, right?
Yeah, I love the extra lift is right, because you want to spend as much time as you can, in front of the customer. And what that could be in a sales call face to face, it could be on a Zoom, it could be in an email or texting, but you want to be engaging with the customer. So anything that gives you more time to engage with the customer more deeply, or increase your reach with more customers, all those things, and then gives you the capabilities to follow up, in the right way, is really, really important.
Awesome. So Henry and Emmett and others that have asked questions, thanks. If there's others on, feel free to follow on with any questions as well. So what about integration with marketing and the importance there?
Super important. It's like the one of my favorite movies, Glengarry Glen Ross. It's about the leads. So getting, that's what the sales rep want. That's quality leads. So, and that, to me, that's marketing's, foremost job, is to get super high quality leads to the sales team. If I look at many of the companies I've been involved with, that it takes a long time to build. That's as much as the product, kind of product market fit, is, I'll call it, the marketing sales fit. And so that would be if I was doing due diligence as a investor or as a potential salesperson, sales manager, I'd want to talk to salespeople and say, how many high quality leads are you getting a day, a week, a month? How many deals do you need to do to make quota? Because my guess is, it's probably 1 in 30, maybe 1 in 30, depending on the company, leads translate to a customer, say that quarter or that month or whatever the measurement period you're operating in. So understanding that and going in with your eyes open to that relationship between marketing and sales is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just grabbed, I was just thinking about, so my book that you're kind enough to contribute to, Tucker posted the link up there. So you had 3 great write-ups. First one was hiring practices for the salesperson for earlier stage companies. So that's pretty relevant. So what would be some other hiring tips that you have not mentioned?
Well, I think in hiring, and it'd be interesting to, maybe someone could ask ChatGPT, I don't know, like what the success rate in hiring salespeople in startups. I got to believe it's sub 50%. Now, what I mean by that is that person, within a reasonable period of time, whatever your ramp period, let's say it's 6 months, a year, that person's up to speed and stays with the company. But I think founders or executives are not spending the appropriate amount of time. Often the lens is not clear on what they're looking for. And I'll call it then the early, I think we called it at EMC, Randy, the fast start program. So I'll call it the funnel of talent, of sales talent, sales management talent, the decision making, and then the ramp approach. Need a lot of work, and there's big opportunities there. So, I would encourage those of you who work in startups as salespeople or sales manager hiring and I'm happy to chat in one-off about this, but spend a lot more time on thinking through that hiring and ramping. And then if you are looking at joining a company, I would spend some time asking those questions. What are the qualities you're looking for in a salesperson? What are other, I think one of the things we had right at EMC, we had a lot of things right, Randy, but the early sales team, let's call it the first 100, like amazing. I know we had some, not everyone worked out, but tribute to Dick and Roger and a few others, but the quality of the hiring and the quality of the training was just unbelievable. Starting with what is a computer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, classic. But also too, a lot of it was, friends of friends, right? So if Andy Clavin's there and he refers me, Andy O'Brien's there, he refers you, that's really what it's all about. And today, how much hiring happens where there's no reference checking, or the reference checking is just a check, which is a huge mistake.
Huge mistake.
Yeah. You've got another submission here, sell yourself, sell your company, and then sell your product.
Yeah, you have to, think about any of the interactions you have with, whether it's a product, you're looking for your company or you're going into a store or whatever, but you first, you've got to sell yourself, and that happens, that has to happen quickly. That kind of bond, the trust, the excitement, the energy has to happen. And it happened to me last night. My wife and I went out with my sister-in-law, brother. We went to this nice little Greek restaurant in Longboat Key area, Sarasota. And it was this waiter, Theo, he came, it was a packed restaurant, but he came to our table and the energy, immediately, this guy is just phenomenal. And I think that has to be the same experience you have in a sales situation. Then you have to sell your company. Why? Because your customers are putting their trust in you and the organization behind the product. So, that goes back to the Kool-Aid. So you got to really believe in the company and sell why it's a great company, or why the folks around you, the team, whether that's a 4-person startup or Bill Scannell running thousands of people at Dell, but you've got a whole organization to support the customer, and then the product. And I would say, I think the best salespeople today, SDRs, sales account exec, sales managers, have got to be awesome at product knowledge, more awesome than ever. So I think customers are really knowledgeable. So you've really got to be able to do a demo. You've really got to understand how it fits into the customer environment. These, kind of stacks that the customer is responsible for, the tech stack, is daunting. So you really got to understand how it's going to fit, for your customer. So sell yourself, sell your company, and sell your product, and be the best at knowing your product.
Absolutely. What about any kind of 1 or 2 mentors that you've had and advice you've received?
Well, I've had many mentors. When I think back, Frank Keeney, who passed away a number of years ago, and many of us know him. He was, I'll call it the first, at least in my mind, the first real sales, experienced sales exec. And Frank did, this is at EMC. And I think what Frank did that I'll always remember and value is, while he was tough and demanding, if you worked for him, you knew he had your back. And when he went back to corporate, he was fighting, meaning fighting for the sales team, fighting for better products, better marketing leads, things. So he was in your corner, but still very demanding. And he was a terrific mentor. And then when I moved to back to San Francisco in 2009, I was fortunate enough to become friends with a guy named Bill Campbell. There's a book about him called A $1 Trillion Coach. Bill passed away in 2016, but Bill was a mentor to many, including me and Randy, but was really, he had many skills, was a lovable man, lovable person, but his ability to be candid, like really candid, I've never seen anything like it. And that was super helpful to me personally, but also helped me in my relationships with people I work with, or maybe CEOs I coach. Is this, and I don't want to even say I'm close to Bill, but just this idea of, I'll call it love and candor at the same time. Bill there was no one better.
Absolutely. And he would be very proud of, I'll say how you've turned out. And one of his, I remember him telling me all the time, I love, Peter, he gets his fingernails dirty, gets in, he knows what's going on, gets down the grassroots, figures it all out. And certainly so many other great attributes. An awesome coach, great book, $1 Trillion Coach, which is a total easy read. Highly recommend checking it out for sure. So we have here from Dave Donatelli, who was your best telesales rep ever? Is that a leading question? Was it him?
I would say, honest, the best telesales rep I ever had was the current CEO of Riverbed.
That would be Dave himself.
And I'll call Dave extraordinary leader, and incredible ability, which we don't see in many, because Dave he's operated some very large companies, and it's a skill I always wish we had in smaller companies, is the ability to get alignment with disparate organizations. I think Dave does that as good as I've ever seen. And that's really hard, whether you have a 5-person startup or you've got, you're the CEO of Riverbed or executive at Oracle or HP or EMC. Getting an organizational synchronization or alignment is really difficult. And Dave is as good as I've ever seen doing that, but was also the best telesales rep I've ever had.
There you go. So Dave, hopefully you go into your, I don't know if you have a call center or not, but you could really blow their socks off by picking up the phone and going at it. And I'll vouch for sure what you said for Dave. I had the pleasure of working for him during some great times at HP and some not great times, and are trying to cut our way to greatness, but certainly always there, very helpful, always very customer centric, definitely highly regarded. So thanks, Dave. Time flies when you're having fun here. So what about at the end, I like to ask, and I didn't prep you with this, so I apologize. Any PG Randy story?
There's so many stories about Randy, who I love dearly, but I don't know, there's so many, but one I'll never forget. What Randy was the 4381, which was a product we had that was a successful product at EMC. And I asked Randy to come out to help make sales calls in California. But Randy also, his oldest son, Philip, was a young kid. And Randy flew to California, made sales calls, took a red eye back to Boston, and I needed him a day later, and he came back out to California. And I was like, wow, like Randy, and if people who know Randy, like many of us know, that no one's surprised by that. Like Randy's level of like family and work, and there was like, nothing's going to sacrifice. And Randy, I don't know, like just amazing energy still to this day. But so I guess that's a G version, but I think for me captures a lot about Randy. So I'm sure I have PG, maybe even R rated, but that's for another day.
All right, we'll stop it there. So thanks. So Peter, certainly been amazing. So many great nuggets about sales and startups for sure, and certainly a lot of those go for larger companies as well. Thanks to Apex Revenue and Phone Ready Leads for being the sponsor. Thanks, Tucker, for your help behind the scenes. Again, for those that are member Sales Community, thanks. For those that are not, you can go to salescommunity.com and see the free link that says Winter Free. And next week, we have, Peter, you probably know Brian Babineau from DocuSign.
Oh, yeah. Terrific person. Awesome.
So look forward to having him. Then the following week, Elizabeth Brophy from IBM, and then Peter Trezino from Dell. And other great slate all set up. And if anybody wants, you can go to the website. You can see everybody that we have booked out weekly. Now I think it's over 6 years, which is a little crazy, but is what it is. So Peter, awesome. Thanks. Take care. Have a good one. Tucker's going to disconnect us. And if you can stay on for us to wrap, that'd be great.
Thank you, Randy.
Everybody have a great week.